This is a visual identity we developed for Moderate Majority, a nonprofit in San Diego devoted to helping veterans in risk of losing their home. So, the first message that we understood this brand had to convey was that they help San Diego veterans' urgent needs simply because the man won't. Usually, we're talking about month to month rent and bill to pay against up to 10 months of waiting time for help from the VA and some other organizations to really come and do their job. Moderate majority is essentially doing what the state isn't always able to do. So they know the struggle up close. When we were interviewing the staff of Moderate Majority, they told us about a friend they had who unfortunately committed suicide. He was a veteran, and they thought that they could have done way more to help him and prevent this tragedy. So that is precisely what they're doing now. They are doing as much as possible day to day. They help by preventing issues. Whenever a veteran loses his home, whenever his family is forced to go sleep at a motel for a couple of days, and then when the money runs out, they're forced to live in their car, they usually get sick faster and they won't be able to afford medications. So they will turn to alcohol and drugs. And now, when there wasn't a drug addiction problem, you now have that bigger issue, which is, by the way, more expensive to treat than just a housing problem or a problem with paying your rent. That is why moderate majority exists. And they need to find people who care, people who understand this issue and are willing to do more than just what they would usually do. Moderate majority isn't just about shaking hands. It's not just about posing for the picture. They really hit the streets, and we needed that brand to convey the message so that people would understand that they are the ones who are giving their all to help. So, for this to happen, they need to stay independent. They won't take any funding from governments or corporations because then they'd have to essentially follow their agendas, and that is just something they won't be doing. So we have a clear, compelling story that this brand needs to tell every time. First of all, that moderate majority helps veterans in San Diego. Now, how do we do this? By helping people, we are basically giving them some sort of cover. In this specific case, it is the cover of a roof over their heads. And the way to translate this into a symbol or a figure is by having a curved line, which can also represent a piece of cloth, a blanket that could keep you warm during the cold nights. Second, moderate majority is all about humans, and this humanizing effort is really important for reasons that you are about to see. We chose to have a swirl as an element of this organic nature. This human one-to-one fundraising is really part of what makes moderate majority such a valuable brand, because they will go and hit the streets and they will meet you at a shopping mall one-to-one, telling you about the necessary donations that they are collecting and how you can join the effort. And just as they do that, they also take each case individually, selecting the veterans and their families that truly need this help. They will follow up to see how they eventually reinstate back into civilian life. One of the issues that we found when we were interviewing veterans for the research process of this project was that they found that usually people tend to believe that army people, that veterans, that people who have served their country are made of tougher material and they don't suffer as much as civilians do. Of course, this is not always the case, but it is very common, and you cannot help someone unless you believe that they need your help. We had to tell people that veterans are humans and that they suffer as much, if not more, than civilians. So that was one of the issues here to solve. And the third message was that moderate majority has the street credibility. They know what they're talking about and they will be willing to walk the talk. So, how do we convey this credibility? Well, through symbols of respect, such as a ribbon. You will find ribbons as symbols for causes, either cancer or AIDS. You will also find the flag as a symbol of respect, and it really echoes into the piece of cloth that we talked about before. So, what we did to build the isotype for this visual identity was to abstract the American flag. We began with a grid on which we formed these two banners, which can also be seen as ribbons, as the American flag, of course, as the two M's in moderate and majority. And of course, there's also that covering part, those could be very well roofs on houses that belong to a housing project. We decided to balance the curviness and organic nature of the isotype with a bold uppercase typeface so that we could still talk about the urgency and the importance of the effort, not just trying to make it friendly. We modified the T's and the E's as well as the tracking to give it a more distinctive look, and we added the colors from the American flag. The white, of course, is in white space and it will only literally be there whenever there is a white background, but it still conveys the message of a national symbol without actually showing the flag with all of its intricacies and details that don't really translate as well when you're designing a logo. This is the horizontal version as well as grayscale version, and of course there's white on black, white on red, white on blue, and we decided that it would be a good idea to include a hand symbol that could be used whenever there were pictures being taken of the staff and of veterans during activities for the nonprofit. It's the two hands joining together and forming an M. such as the two M's in the isotype. This is so not only because it's easy to do with your hands, but because it's also distinctive and it conveys the two essential parts of the human interaction that this brand is also based around. That is, that someone needs someone else's help. And it's a cycle. First, there were people willing to sacrifice their lives as a service to their fellow countrymen, and now it's those countrymen who are willing to make a very small sacrifice in comparison to help those veterans who are eventually expected to get back on their feet and go back to society to help once again and continue the cycle. We developed a color palette based on the colors of the American flag. And of course, we developed a few mock ups on how the logo would look like in different media. When we were presenting this visual identity to the client, I was wearing a blazer, and as soon as we came to this slide, I uncovered the left side of my chest to reveal that I was wearing this pin the whole time. And just as this happened, the client was also receiving their own pins from us. So this was a really cool moment. This is what the step and repeat would look like, as well as bumper stickers, letterhead, merchandising, social media presence, printouts, trifolds, and of course a tattoo. Now, we also developed 3 concepts for an advertising campaign. Now, these are all mock-ups. You can see that they are mock-ups, but I think that the message really got across. This is basically a comparison on how much the government is willing to spend on war versus how much they are willing to spend on helping people who were sent to war. And we found that the government spends more than $600 billion yearly on war, but less than 25% of that on helping veterans. And we decided to make a pun, visual and otherwise, with these figures. Instead of writing down 6 billion, we wrote down the 12 figures to really give a sense of how enormous this amount of money is. And instead of writing 25% or the exact amount, we wrote the word quarter. Of course, meaning that it is 25%, but also a visual pun because you're seeing there a boat, which could be a destroyer or an air carrier or whatever, made out of $100 bill. And in your mind, you're going to compare that with a 25-cent coin so that you get a sense of how disproportionate it can be. This image relies on the same concept. In this case, it's a plane, a fighter, and you have Ben Franklin looking right at you. And he looks disappointed. On the other hand, a buck can do so much when you donate to moderate majority. And we wanted people to understand that we are not expecting any extraordinary feat from them. We are just expecting them to share as much as they can. If it's just a couple of bucks, if it's just whatever they were going to spend on coffee that month, it really helps. The second concept we developed for this campaign was that of a catalog you may find at IKEA and other furniture stores, in which you have the picture of the product, the accessories that may go well with it, and colors, textures, and in some cases, the name of the designer. In this case, we also included a picture. So we started with the Restless Park bench, which you can choose in cold steel black or in rusty finish. Of course, blankets and pillows are not included, and the designer is Sergeant John Doe, Navy SEAL and homeless veteran. We also have the soliciting cash holder, which is very practical for holding all of your bills and coins, and has that added value of rattling the coins, making noise loud enough so that people know that you are soliciting, and it is not intended for beverages. And at last, we have the four-wheel portable home with a storage unit that is convenient for taking all of your belongings from place to place. And this is what it would look like as a mock-up in a magazine. Imagine that ad running a local magazine. The third concept was based on the fact that the VA will sometimes take up to 10 months to help veterans in need. So we found things that you could do in less or equal time. For example, getting pregnant and 9 months later, bringing your baby home. We chose these for two reasons. The first one is that the creation of life is such an essential part of many people's objectives that it is so commonplace. And the second one is that this is kind of a long and far away objective for some people. So it seems like a distant goal, and even more distant is getting help from the government for many veterans. Based on the same principle, we found that the trip from the Earth to Mars would take less than 9 months. But of course, when you think about going to Mars, you're thinking that it's not going to happen next year or maybe not even the next decade. So it really looks as a far away goal. And even farther than that is receiving help. Now, this is something that you could do right away, and we found that while a veteran waits for government help to arrive, you could make a round trip between Los Angeles and New York on foot. So it took a team of 8 people to develop this visual identity. We had a lot of fun and hard-working sessions that really paid off. We were happy, we were proud with the result of this project, and so was the client. This is the before and after, and I must say that I am really proud of the job they have done, and I'm really thankful for them turning to us.